it is. And
Okay,
you should get a thing in the middle of the screen saying the meeting is being recorded.
okay. I can see at the top it says being recorded.
On the top,
So
yeah.
I'll introduce this evening's topic then. This is the first session of this new year around the Grove. And today is the 30th of December. So we haven't started 2025 yet, but this is the day that the sun transitions from the days of the yew tree into the days of the birch tree. So the sun is doing its own thing. It's not following the Gregorian calendar as such. So it's starting a bit earlier. So the days of birch begin today. And if you want the basic lore for the birch tree, we did that in 2022. You can find it on the YouTube channel. Just put birch tree 2022. The year after we did herbalism, so that was 2023. And last year, or this year, 2024, we did gods and goddesses. So we looked at different deities that could correspond with each tree. So that's a massive archive now. And that all required PowerPoint presentations, which I'm not doing this year. I'm giving myself an easier time. So just hosting these conversations. So the topic of each conversation throughout the year will be inspired by the Ogham Grove Oracle deck, which is coming out in January. But I've put all that on the website so you can see what the topics will be. Primarily, the topics are about what to do inside your grove. Well, they're ideas of what you can do inside your grove. Whereas the past 3 years, we've been going around the circumference, if you like, and we still do that with a meditation at the end. So today's topic, and I'll do it for each quarter of the year. So today's topic is really just an overview of the first acma. So if you're new to the Ogham, it's 20 trees in a circle is the way we're looking at it. And it's divided into 4 quarters of 5 trees in each quarter. So the first acma is just the first quarter. And that takes us from now with the birch tree through to Imbolc and then to the spring equinox. So the first acma goes from winter solstice, if you like, to spring equinox as a simple thing. So there's 5 trees doing that. And we'll talk about that in a second. I'll just describe it how I see it based on what we've done over the past few years. You can kind of see the yew tree as the conclusion of the Ogham, which it is. It's the last tree in the circle. But as a year wheel, the yew tree is holding the position of midnight or 00, you know, that kind of death and rebirth moment. On a clock, it would be 12 o'clock or midnight. So the birch tree today, we go into the days of birch, is like going from midnight to 1 o'clock, if you like. So birch is the first tree of the wheel, but it's kind of born from the winter solstice. So with the winter solstice, you have the rebirth of the sun. And with the birch tree, we looked at the birch tree corresponding with the goddess Ellen of the Ways and other sovereignty goddesses. Now, the interesting with the name Ellen is it can literally mean a ray of sunshine. It relates to deer. It can be a young deer, but in Greek, and the Druids used Greek as a trade language, Ellen means a ray of sunlight. So it's interesting that you've got the winter solstice and the rebirth of the sun, and then a goddess that symbolically is the ray of sunshine. And she then leads on to the Rowan tree, which is the eternal flame, creative fires of the goddess Bridget. So there's this kind of rebirth of the sun, and the sunlight is carried through this sunbeam to quicken the eternal flame of Bridget. That's kind of happening with Birch and Rowan. That takes us to Imbolc, the festival of Bridget. And then we're at the Alder tree. The law changes slightly then. It's to do with the protection of the land, and the Alder tree being the tree of shields. And then to the Willow tree and the 9 maidens, and then to the ash tree at the spring equinox. So I'll stop waffling there, and we'll just talk generally about the birch tree, the rowan tree, the alder tree, the willow tree, and the ash tree. And then I'll come back and put some more ideas in. So this again, if you're working with the Ogham magically, for ceremony, for ritual, for sacred space, having an overview of the first quarter is useful, because you can kind of plan ahead what you're going to do for the next few months. So I'll leave that open. So let's talk about that for now. You can ask any questions about the first acma or about any of those trees.
I have a question in a hand. Can you see my hand?
Yep.
Okay. So I was thinking about it since we've mentioned the first Aicme being this session, is the flow, kind of like a feeling of the flow from the birch, which has this fire, super solar energy, let's say, and then going to the rowan, which is more like the hearth fire and the fire of inspiration, and through this fire thing to alder, which I see this, my familiar alder in my grove is in the middle of a creek. It just lives in this, it's literally in the middle of this creek, which dries up somewhat in the summer. So it's like, it's super watery, but you've mentioned it as also the shield and the land. So I'm trying to understand the flow. And of course, willow is water for sure for me. I've always thought of it as water. And then ash is like this really incredibly deep-rooted, tall tree, the yggdrasil and all that. So trying to understand an energy flow there through elemental thoughts. Can you describe anything like that and set me a little straight, Yuri?
Yes, so that's kind of one. So I'll just say that this is all relatively subjective. This is my ideas. So I don't want you thinking this is ancient law or anything. These are the patterns that I'm seeing. So I'm thinking that each acma has its own song, tells its own story. So you can look at the individual trees and just look at rowan tree or just look at willow tree. But I'm also thinking that each quarter of the year has a theatre or story. And so that's kind of what we're looking at with the flowing. So on the one little insight was what we've just looked at, that there is this kind of rebirth of the sun at the winter solstice, a ray of sunlight that then goes to the eternal flame of Bridget and so on. And we already looked last year how that whole winter solstice yew tree moment also corresponded with the classical goddesses Hestia and Vesta, and they're the goddesses of the eternal flame. So that's there as well, behind the scenes, as it were, and obviously has an expression through St. Bridget of Kildare and her eternal flame. So these are ancient ways of working with things. But there is also other layers of storytelling from the law. And here's another layer that I see, is that this first acma is all to do with sovereignty expressed in different ways. And I'll explain that very quickly then. So Ellen in the Mabinogion is a sovereignty goddess of Wales that the Roman emperor marries, blah, 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 so on. Bridget too is a sovereignty goddess. She marries Bress, and so she's the queen of the Duatha de Danann. So that's a bit different to Saint Bridget of Kildare, that the triple goddess Bridget is actually queen of the Tuatha De Danann by marrying Bress. Her son dies in the second battle of Moytura. And that's echoed with the Alder tree, where the goddess for the Alder tree is Branwen, and she's queen of Ireland, and her son is sadly killed at the beginning of a war. So both Bridget and Branwen lose their sons, and they're both queens. So their bloodline, their royal bloodline, is terminated by tragedy. So there's a curiosity thing there. The willow tree is a bit more tenuous, but what's really interesting is there's lore for a triple Ellen, there's lore for a triple Bridget. If you followed that and saw triplicity as being Celtic queens, then that's kind of there with Branwen potentially. And with the willow tree, you get the 9 maidens. So you get 3 times 3. So that's a curiosity there. And it concludes with the ash tree, which isn't a goddess of sovereignty, but the 5 guardian trees of Ireland, 3 of them were ash trees, and the 3 ash trees were all in County Meath, which is the centre of high kingship. So the first acma begins with this kind of awareness of divine queens and sovereignty, and concludes with the ash tree, which is the tree of kingship and sovereignty. So there's 2 songs there. The first acma is about the winter solstice, rebirth of the sunlight traveling across the land, but also singing about sovereignty of the land. One final thing with that is in northern Britain, Bridget is called Brigantia, and she's depicted with a spear and a shield. And uniquely, the tree of shields is the Alder tree, and the tree of spears is the ash tree. So the spear and the shield are also part of the first acma. Again, a song of Bridget, Brigantia. There's a lot of ideas there.
Okay, so listen to what you're saying, Louis. Yuri. I've just travelled over Pendle Hill now. Now, right here at Pendle Hill, right where I live, is Waddington, and this is on the Ellen dragon line that would be the spine of Albion. So we've gone back into dragon energies, 33 nodes, and Ellen rising with Belinus. But I've just recently found out, well, it's just kind of like hit home again, that we have the ash tree in the male centre of Great Britain. We have the omphalos in Whalley, which is the womb of Pendle, or called Whale. So that's the waters. But in between both of those is known as the Tolkien Trail. It's where 3 rivers join. It's where there's a very ancient medieval church, a pub called the Aspen. But those 3 rivers look like they're 4 rivers. Now, those 3 rivers is where something quite special happened in 2020. And I was looking at the picture of it, and I can see within this green light a kind of female silhouette. So I was doing a bit of research on this celestial portal, because I went down there on the full moon that's just gone, and I was stood on the exact spot again, and right above me was Cassiopeia. Right above was the W shape. Exactly where I stood was a W. And we spoke about that a lot. So I was thinking, okay, the W's here. But when I did some research on the east to west river
Okay.
Because actually, the way I'm working out, you've got 3 rivers, but it actually forms a cross shape, like the cross of Bridget, actually. And also, what's interesting, it was around water again. So what I'm seeing in the first acma is a lot of fire and water.
Okay, let me just stop you there, because there's a ton of information in what you're saying, and we can come back to it. Just for other people that don't know, Bridget is working quite intimately with her immediate landscape, which is central to the British Isles. And so some of the things she's talking about are to do with different earth mysteries of power lines and sacred rivers and so on. But just to cover some other things then, I'm thinking that magically we all use different magical tools in ceremony or in visualization. So 2 treasures that you could pick up in a meditation from the first acma would be a shield and a spear as sacred tools of Bridget, Brigantia, Bellissima. I'll explain that in a minute. And something very important that Bridget mentioned was omphalos. So in northern Britain, where Brigantia is depicted with a spear and a shield, she's also by her feet got a sacred stone, which looks a bit like an acorn, and it's actually called an omphalos. And an omphalos is a sacred navel or belly button. And it represents that Brigantia holds the center point of a territory or a landscape. So if on the one hand, you can go around the grove looking at the 20 trees as part of a circumference, but we're also looking at what to do in the center of your grove. And Bridget, Brigantia, Bellissima is holding the center point. So especially in this current era of the Age of Aquarius, from a Celtic perspective, the Age of Aquarius is governed by Bridget, Brigantia, because Imbolc happens in the sign of Aquarius. So there will be a cosmic Imbolc. So for the next 2,500 years, Bridget, Bridie, Brigantia, Bellissima is that center point thing. Now, corresponding with the center point, the omphalos, the navel, the belly button, the center of your territory, is the center of the stars. And the center of the stars, the midpoint of the Milky Way between the winter stars and the summer stars, is the W-shaped constellation Cassiopeia, the Queen of Heaven. So the name Bridget or Bridie or Brigantia just means the high one or the exalted one. And the most high there all year round is the Queen of Heaven, the W-shaped Brigantia. It is ever present. And she has many, many, many different names. She's Isis to Egypt, of course, you know. But the mother goddess at the center of the Milky Way corresponds with the omphalos in the center of your grove. So as much as the birch tree and the rowan tree are this time of year, as we go around the year, Brigid Brigantia, or I would say the sovereignty goddess, is ever present in the center of your kingdom, you know, and you work with that how you choose to work with it. And the shield and the spear can be tools for working with that. So the shield, if you lie it down flat, it's a big round circle. It represents the sacred wheel. And the spear can be put in the center point, so that it goes vertically up like an axis pole to the star realm. So the shield and spear are for defending the land and the mother bear defending her young, but it's also the circumference and the pole axis to the center of the stars. So there's lots there that you could work with. Bellissima is just one of many titles of the Most High, the Shining One, the Radiant, you know. Yeah.
I've not heard that before, Bellissima. I haven't really. But when I broke it down in etymology, it was Bella, beautiful, and mother, the beautiful mother. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I saw Cassiopeia actually above. So Cassiopeia never moves. She's always in the same position, is she?
She's ever present. She's what you call a circumpolar star. So some stars come and go depending on the winter and the summer. But the circumpolar stars are always there. And for the Northern Hemisphere, the world of the Celts, it's Cassiopeia, the big bear, the little bear, and Draco the dragon are always present. But Cassiopeia holds the midpoint of the Milky Way. So she's not the pole star area it's searched, but that Milky Way, really important because that was seen as the pathway of souls.
Because interesting, that spot, I've actually seen it completely open up, and there's like going to be weird now, like a golden boat that transports the souls backwards and forwards.
Yeah, so she's right there on that celestial river Nile.
That makes sense now. Yes. Yeah.
But she's also always at the center of your grove, always at the center of your middle cauldron.
I like the word shield, as in shield, like Sheila, shield. It's got the she in it, hasn't it? You know, so yeah.
And then another thing then is that once you get to Imbolc, and on the other, so you've got birch tree, rowan tree, takes you to the moment of Imbolc. And then on the other side of Imbolc, you've got the alder tree. And the alder tree and the willow tree are unique in the Ogham, that they're the two trees that love the water side. So I nicknamed this area the water's edge. And it corresponds with the part of the zodiac that is known as the wet area of the zodiac. And it's wet because Aquarius is pouring the waters and Pisces, the fish, are swimming in those waters. So Aquarius and Pisces, side by side as the wet part of the zodiac, corresponds with the alder tree and the willow tree being the wet riverside, the water's edge.
Okay, so there's two fire goddesses coming in, Ellen, Bridget, Bellissima, Ellen and Bridget, and then we've got the water coming in with the Rowan and Birch, and then we've got the water coming through with Ellen and Willow.
The alder tree and willow are water lovers.
Yeah, or fire and water, fire then water. Okay.
And then in other Welsh bardic lore, Pisces, which is the willow tree, Pisces is the salmon weir for the salmon of wisdom. And when you get to the end of the first acma with the ash tree, the sun is going from Pisces to Aries. And that is in zodiacal anatomy, that's from the soles of the feet to the pineal gland. So the soles of the feet are Pisces, the fish, governed by Pisces, and then suddenly at spring equinox, you're at Aries, the ram, and the pineal gland. So we call that the salmon's leap. It's the end of one zodiacal year going to the of a new zodiacal year. So back to this first acma, you've got winter solstice and death of the old year and stillness, and then the rebirth of the sun, and the energy is rising up to Imbolc, and then to the salmon weir, and then the salmon's leap to spring equinox is another song or story
I love that.
of this acma.
It's a little bit like it's a bit like conception. You know, you've got this fire as the sperm and the egg come together, you know, in the dark mother, and then it travels down and it ends up in the waters. You know, like it's gone from fire to waters, you know, and then you've got this tree of the umbilical cord growing at ash.
I've just seen Annalise has raised her hand.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for this particular little topic to wind up. So I put my hand up. So what normally happens if someone puts their hand up and you look at your screen, the top group of people, if they've got their hands up, then they'll all be lined up at the top of the screen.
At the moment, it's just you.
I know it's just me right now, but I want to wait till the lady. Now we see. I don't know. Bridget, is it?
Bridget.
Yeah, I don't know where the hand is. I don't know how to work the hand. Sorry.
It's just down the bottom of the screen.
Your device. Depends on
There's
your
a whole
device.
row of things down the bottom of the screen. Starting.
Annalise, not all of us have the same screen opportunity. Mine, although I have it on almost every Zoom I ever attend, today I do not have it. So we can't use those hands like you can so easily.
Okay.
But you can put your physical hand up and I'll try and be aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mana, do you want to say something?
I want to know how you spell Bellissima.
That's good.
Bridget, how are you spelling it?
Okay, so how I saw it was B-E-L-L-A, Bella, it's Bella, Bella, Liss, L-A-M-A, like Bella Liss. It's got quite a lot of A's in it, actually. I thought it would have an I, but I saw it's Bella Liss, acma.
I've got it slightly differently from that. Quite a lot differently, in fact. I've got B-E-L-L-I-S-I-M-A, Bellissima.
Oh, okay.
I saw with an A rather than an I, but it's like Brigid, isn't it? Brigid, Bride, Bridget. I mean, you spell it. There's so many ways to spell it. It's like with a similar thing.
I was thinking it was B-E-L-I.
Like mother. I was like, ooh.
What are you saying, Yuri?
I was thinking it was B-E-L-I, belly, summer.
Yeah, except it's a double L.
Yeah.
B-E.
That's a good one. Yeah, Bella. Back to belly, Bella. I saw it as Bella.
Is it from medieval stories or is there an actual inscription somewhere in Roman?
I was trying to do some history on the Bellissima because I really love the word as well, how it rolls off the tongue. Yeah. And I was like, oh, how does this all fit in? Because this river that runs from east to west, it's known for this Bellissima, the goddess, and she is the goddess of the moon and the sun together, united both together, apparently. I was trying to do a bit more digging, but as yet I haven't really come across too much. But the way I was looking at the way the land fitted, I could really see the bridge at crossing there, how it all fitted together, the four directions over the three rivers. And it's exactly where the Tolkien Trail is. I was kind of quite fascinated by that. So I wanted to try and put it together a bit more. But Bellissima, and apparently there is a dragon in the river and you got to be careful because a lot of young children get taken away by the dragon, apparently.
Well, if it's corresponding as a center point with the omphalos, then it's going to correspond with the center of the stars. So there is a dragon in the center of the star as well. So symbolically, Draco the dragon would be reflected in the water.
I think it's not the land one. There's two land markings. It's in between both of them. I think it's a celestial omphalos.
Mm-hmm.
And Cassiopeia was right above it. In the winter months, that was full moon, so it probably is over around the winter time. Yeah, or maybe in summer it is. I don't know. But yeah,
I've got Bellissimo.
Bellissimo.
Bellissimo. It's Italian, and it is the masculine adjective describing a boy, man, any masculine noun. Bellissima. Actually, Bellissima is feminine, used to describe a girl, woman, female, feminine noun, but meaning very beautiful.
Yeah, I just found something.
Italian.
I just put it in the chat, actually. It's a superlative, as in bella is beautiful, but bellissima means like the most beautiful.
Yes.
That's what a superlative means.
Oh yeah, like the shining, most beautiful.
So that goes back.
Has all the derivatives. Yeah.
That goes back to Ellen as well then. So in the dream of Max and Fledegg, when the emperor first sees her and she's described, it literally says that it would be easier to look at the sun than to gaze upon Ellen, because she is so bright and shiny. She's shinier than the sun, you know. So she is that radiant shining.
Yeah.
So it's just a goddess. Okay,
Yeah.
so someone said Bellissima is a Celtic goddess.
Yeah.
Okay, so Celtic.
Yeah, with the goddess, there's a Gaulish spelling. There's the from France with a Bele, and there's another one Beli that's kind of got the Roman Romano-Celtic connection with Minerva, who isn't necessarily a solar goddess, but she says it's called very bright. Means very bright.
Bright and shining, very bright. They're all pretty much saying what Bridget is alluding to.
Yeah.
Very bright. Right. And I actually think the Tolkien trail that's there, I actually think it was an ancient graveyard. I haven't to prove that yet, but my gut is telling me something about it being a passage of souls. So I had a vision once as well about in a underwater temple there was a goddess at the entrance, but then this ancient, the source of all goddesses, she came out and she was so beautiful you couldn't see her face at all, but her hair just was like Medusa. It just waved and waved, and the wave of her hair, which was alive, each strand was alive like serpent dragons. It became the ocean and her body became the jellyfish. And she was the most beautiful of the beautiful. And then the water went on a red rock into a whirlpool. And if you went through the whirlpool, it came back into the temple. It was like this ever-ending. She's the source of the most beautiful, and it just this ever-ending cycle of life. That was just a vision I had once some time ago. But that could be Bellissima.
But here's a pattern of triple goddesses then that I was kind of seeing, was that going back to the yew tree as the zero moment. In the ancient world, yew groves were sacred to Hecate, who's threefold. And to the Romans, Hecate is Diana Triformis. So a three-formed Diana, or trivia, three ways. So the yew tree has a relationship to the divine feminine threefold. And then with the birch tree and Ellen, the three cities that were made for her by the emperor, Caerleon, Carnarvon, Carmarthen, the exact center of that triangle is Elenith, which means Ellen's land. So from the center point, again, the omphalos, from the center point, there's three ways to Ellen's three cities. So that would give her a three-way thing, like Diana, if you like. And another, just this is purely coincidence, but as Ellen can mean a ray of light, then the Druid symbol of the Arwen is three Ellens. It's three rays of light. Quite an interesting idea. And then Bridget, of course, a lot of people tend to think of Saint Bridget of Kildare, but the goddess Bridget is threefold. There's three sisters called Bridget. They're the daughters of the Dagda, you know. So with the yew tree, the birch tree, and the rowan tree, it's triple goddess, triple goddess, triple goddess. And then with the older tree, that pattern isn't there. There's no story of Branwen being threefold, but she is a goddess queen, same as the others. So it becomes, yeah. And then you get to the nine maidens. So the nine maidens are something other or different. They relate to the nine muses of bardic poetic inspiration, which was really important to both the Irish and the Welsh bards, of course, you know, the source of inspiration, the nine hazelnuts, the salmon of wisdom, and all of that kind of stuff. So the nine maidens, 3 times 3, after these triple goddesses, and they keep the middle cauldron warm. That is, they keep the cauldron of Annuin warm. And the word Annuin means inner world. So your psychic, poetic, inspirational inner world is kept warm by these nine maidens. Now, is that a triple for the upper cauldron, a triple for the middle, and a triple for the lower? You know, that cauldrons as
that sounds good, doesn't it? Like you've got 3 cauldrons and you've got a triple in each one.
Yeah. Like each kingdom has a triple goddess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing I would like to have a little look at, if I can speak now.
Annalise.
Yeah, Annalisa. The thing I'd like to have a look at is what you mentioned about sovereignty. I find this particularly interesting because this is something that's very much taken over my life for, well, quite a long time, but very much so this last couple of years. And I'm about to present my affidavit to the powers that be. If anybody, you maybe don't know what I'm talking about, but it doesn't really matter. But what it's to do with is reclaiming your sovereignty. And it's really interesting that this time of year, which is when I'm just about ready to do it. It's just about ready to go out. That it just happens to be this time that's where sovereignty is important. And I think also in the timeline that we're in, sovereignty is also a very, very, well, yeah, big thing.
I know it's a massive topic, but if you don't have self-sovereignty, you're lost at sea.
Exactly.
You know, there is a general pattern that with the 4th acma, after the autumn equinox, there's a descending with the wild hunt into the dark otherworld. And then after the winter solstice, there's a rising back up. And that salmon's leap back to the spring equinox is hopefully you've had your rite of passage, or you've gone through some initiation, and so you've come back with self-sovereignty.
It just feels like perfect timing. I can feel it resonating with me. I can feel it sort of saying, yeah, it's now. You know, so this is just affirming that, which is actually.
And in the old stories, sovereignty is usually a goddess, and it's usually a would-be king has to marry her. But they're archetypes, you know, so who is your inner sovereignty goddess? It's your muse, in whatever form your muse appears to you, and it's your relationship to your muse. You know, then you have that sacred union inside you.
Yeah.
Spark of inspiration.
Just the old stories tend to be a bit female male in that way, but in the modern world it's you and your inner Tinkerbell muse or whatever it is, you know.
Interesting you should say the word Tinkerbell. I took 3 of my grandchildren, which is why I was eating dinner late. I took 3 of them to see Peter Pan pantomime.
One of my
Tinkerbell, you know, the fairy.
one of my favorite, so confirming what I just said about marriage with your muse, one of my favorite sayings is it was Tinkerbell that made Peter Pan.
Oh, I like it.
And until that moment, he was just an ordinary boy, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fairy
Like
dust. Fairy dust.
Bruce
Fairy
has a-
magic, you know. Yeah. Expanding upon that, this is from Irish sovereignty rites that were done at Meath in the middle of Ireland. So the would-be High King had to marry Maeve, the sovereignty goddess of Meath. Meath just means middle, centre, omphalos. And but there were 3 rules that he had to live by if he was to remain married to the goddess of sovereignty. If he broke any of these rules, the marriage was null and void. Okay, so these are the sovereignty things. The first one is you must never be fearful. That's very, very, very difficult, but I translate that as be peaceful. You know, the second one was you must never be cruel. So I translate that as be kind. And the third one, bearing in mind these are sexual goddesses of love and passion and whatnot, you must never get jealous. You know, so for the male ego, not easy, you know, but if you're content in yourself, then you don't get jealous. So simplistically, if you're peaceful, kind, and content, then you have sovereignty over yourself. But if you're not peaceful, kind, and content, you don't have sovereignty over yourself. How can you have sovereignty over anything?
Very good.
Yeah. So those are the wisdoms of the upper cauldron, the middle cauldron, and the lower cauldron, aren't they? You know.
Oh yeah.
And anybody trying to manipulate you or trigger you is going to try and make you fearful, angry, or malcontented.
Mhm.
But then they can manipulate you. But if you can be peaceful, kind, and content, you're in charge of your chariot.
Yeah, the Blankins just said it's having emotional stability.
Yeah.
Realizing that there's nothing really on the outside to be fearful of.
And that's what should be at the center of your grove.
Yeah, yeah.
You wouldn't want
Do you feel older people when the salmon leaps up in ash, it leaps from lower up to here. So when a salmon goes back to sort of lay its eggs, it's back into source.
Can people who are not speaking switch off their microphones? Because I can hear a lot of typing and all sorts of stuff. It's only really the people who are speaking who should have their microphones on, she said, switching hers off.
We'll get used to it.
So I was just thinking, is it where like the source then is kind of in the pineal pituitary hypothalamus, and there's a union there of the sort of like Sheila goddess, the fire, the water that's down here in the lower cauldron, and it leaps up to meet the ash, the male king, and they unite together in the pineal pituitary, the chamber. Here is the union of the female and the male, and that's where the ash happens. And obviously, in between those, you've got the heart. You know, it's like an umbilical that connects both together. Do you think? I'm just trying to think of the salmon leaps back up to late source. Is our source actually not in our physicality? Is our source actually within our pineal hypothalamus chamber that's here? As in, we are there as well, but that union. I was just thinking about how that would be with the ash tree. You said it leaps up and jumps, and it would go to third eye.
There's many different schools of thought on it, so I'm not going to say one or the other, but you could see the sacred marriage as the union between heaven and earth, or between the physical and the non-physical, or between your mortal self and your immortal self, in which case all that stuff happens in the middle cauldron. That the brain and the pineal gland are part of the physical body that perishes eventually. But if the energy is right in the middle cauldron, then it flows up and it shines out of the eyes as a radiant brow.
Oh, yes.
So then if you see yourself as an atom, your nucleus is your middle cauldron, and then it expands outwards to your forehead and your toes. But there's other ways of looking at it, and there's different ways for different meditations, ideas of activation of the pineal gland as well, So I'd keep my mind open about it, but I would say that we are the paradox of being mortal and immortal, and the immortal bit is outside of the body. It isn't flesh and bone, but it resides within flesh and bone for a lifetime as well, apart from astral traveling, So however you get your head around it, the Druids did teach some sort of transmigration of the soul. That is Druidic belief or Druidic thought, according to Julius Caesar in 50 BC.
I didn't know this, but somebody told me yesterday that July was named after Julius Caesar. Is that right?
I think it's a whole family, the Julii.
Oh.
They were a family, and then they were followed by the Flavians.
Franklin's put something. Hold on.
Any more thoughts about the first acma, those 5 trees? Anybody?
The 5 trees. Well, you've got the pentagram of the rose and the evergreen, but then you've also got 5 trees in each one, haven't you? So even those 5 trees could somehow make a pentagram within the acma.
Yeah. So that this first acma belongs to the pentagram anchored on the spring equinox. So the birch tree and the ash tree are part of that pentagram. So Franklin.
Yeah, hi. I'm not feeling well, so I'm just kind of laying low. But I wanted to ask Yuri, years ago, someone posted in the OM Grove a beautiful song about the whole 20 trees. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, was it? I know of a poem rather than a song. It was like a memory poem to remember all 20 trees in their sequence.
Yeah, somebody might have put that to music, and it was such a great aid.
I'll share the one I know. It was by a man called Adam Ranger. He's the main drummer with the Pentacle Drummers. So I'll put that on the Facebook page.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if JJ knows a song about the 20 trees, but Adam Ranger made a memory poem about all 20.
That's a great idea. We don't have birch here in California, or at least where I am in California, not natively. And I'm super excited about the meditation we're going to have on birch. And whenever I've seen a birch tree in England or on the east coast of the United States, I've just love them. There's just this feeling about them, and the way they feel, and the bark, and the way they look, and the leaves and the wind. I mean, we have extraordinary trees, obviously, in California, anywhere, but something about the birch is really special. So I'm excited to hear about more.
Birch tree also gives out a sweet sugar.
Yes, I heard.
Yeah, xylitol.
Has anybody collected the syrup?
Yeah, the sweet sugar of the goddess Ellen.
And it's safe for diabetes, xylitol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Not only is it safe for diabetes, it heals tooth decay.
Yeah, so there's the xylitol from the bark, but there's also the actual sap of the tree itself is like maple syrup. So there's actually two sweetnesses that come into our diet. They're different. The maple syrup one, it does have calories, and the xylitol does not. Like you said, Yuri, it's diabetes safe.
Yeah.
So could you
write on the bark?
Bark of Ellen, of the birch tree in a tea, and that would still, it wouldn't be sweet, would it? But that would still have the ability to, because your teeth are bones, aren't they? The crystals, and your bones grow from crystals. So your teeth originally must be crystals. And so I suppose Ellen, that way, I'm thinking about crystals and shining light. Yeah.
I remember the famous Iceman that was found in the mountains above Turkey. He's called Utsi, and the ice preserved his equipment, and he had little boxes or pouches made of birch bark.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Wow.
I wanted to show Lily this because where I live, people are planting birches as part of their landscaping, but they're having a very hard time in California. I come from Michigan, land of the birches. So I've lived in birch bark canoes, and we made lots of things out of birch as a kid, books and stuff. And so here's this a friend made from her planting that I'm going to use for my Yule log, but I'm going to do it during birch. Now we're here. Anyway, it's a pretty cool thing, but birches are having a hard time. You see these holes, I thought they were fungus or something, but they're actually, the birch is so beloved, I bet, because of its sweetness of all the pecking kinds of birds, you know.
Right. All the woodpeckers. Yeah, we've tried planting birch in the past, and it's, our summers are just so hot here in California that I don't really like it, but hoping maybe along a creek edge, kind of like an alder, possibly. But I don't know. I think it just needs a different sort of climate, maybe closer to the coast. What were you going to say, Mana?
Oh, I wanted to say that it's interesting because when this was many years ago, probably at least 10 or 11 years ago, I went to Eastern Europe to spend time with my family. And my oldest granddaughter was like, I don't know, 7, 8. And I took her out and we were singing to the fairy because they live in this totally beautiful forest surrounded with birch and alder and every imaginable tree. But what we did was I taught her how to do traditional fairy house building where you use only the elements that are around you. And I told her, I said, when that house is crumbled, it means the fairies are hiding their place to go and help others. So we went and we cut small pieces of birch off of a couple of her birch trees, leaving offerings, of course. And we built this 2-story giant fairy house. And it was at this time of year. So it's no coincidence that the birch was calling to us. And I just wanted to share that story with you.
That's gorgeous.
Anna, tell us about this basket you gave me.
Oh, well, I was looking for a token to give to my sweet sister Annie, who lives down the street from me, for solstice, and I was walking through a senior discount center, like a clothing exchange place where you offer donations, and I found in the middle of all these sewing notations this beautiful little birch bark basket.
Wow.
And I can't remember what the inscription says, Annie, but I really felt like that was a wonderful expression of my love for her and our connection with the trees. I grew up in northern Indiana, and I could throw a stone from my window into Michigan. So I also played with the birch with my father, who was my tree mentor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Okay.
And show us the inside of the basket. I was curious how it's stitched around the edge
It's
there.
got this layer of birch to help it be stronger on the top edge, and there's this very simple but thick. I believe it's made from, I would say willow, but probably birch, because its whole thing claims to be birch. Of this young birch, you know, those birch whips that hang down that have the beautiful catkins on them. I guess it's those that have dried, but it's just gorgeous. And there's a whole little story here. I'll take a photo of it and put it on our. How about if I do that? I'll put these 2 photos on our little web page.
Okay, I'll stop the recording here just because of time pressing.
Can I just say something? Somebody asked a question about the song.
Yeah.
I know who it is. It's
Go on.
one of our local guys. It's Dan the Bard.
Oh,
Oh.
Don.
Oh, okay.
It's Dan the Bard.
OBOD.
Let's try and find it and put it on
I've got it. I've put it up.
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Franklin has also said that birch burns like wax. It burns till it's green. So I don't know what he means by that, but he said birch, if you put it on the fire, burns like wax. Does that mean it melts?
It's a verse. It's a short verse of the woodcutter song.
Oh,
Birds
Yeah.
right.
burn like
Wow.
wax, you can burn them green. Palm logs burn like smoldering flax with no flame to be seen. Ash logs in wintertime, Yule logs as well, sir. Green holly logs, it is a curse for any man to sell, sir.
Go on, put a link to that one for us,
Yeah.
please. I like that.
We share all these on the Facebook group. Okay.
Okay.
I'll stop recording. The next session is for the Rowan tree, and the topic will be the oracle card of the self, which is the self going into the forest and entering Anuin. So we'll be talking about you, your 3 cauldrons, and the center of the grove. So that's the next session we do in a few weeks' time. I'll stop recording now, and we'll do our meditation to the birch tree.